Section 6 of Lives of the Queens of England, Volume 5, by Agnes and Elisabeth Strickland. This recording is in the public domain. Catharine Parr, Chapter 2, Part 3. During the brief period of her royal widowhood, Catharine Parr, now Queen Dowager, resided at her fine jointure house at Chelsea, on the banks of the Thames, with its beautiful and extensive gardens, occupied the pleasant spot now called Cheyne Pier. Some of the noble trees in Mr. Douce's gardens appear coeval with that epoch, and are perhaps the same, under whose budding verdure Queen Catharine was accustomed to hold her secret meetings with her adventurous lover, Sir Thomas Seymour, ere royal etiquette would allow her to give public encouragement to his suit. Faulkner assures us that, at the time of Catharine Parr's residence at Chelsea Place, there was but one passable road in the village, which was a private way to the royal residence, across the open fields. It crossed a footbridge, called in ancient records Blandel Bridge, afterwards the scene of many murders by highwaymen, which caused the name to be corrupted, in vulgar parlance, to Bloody Bridge. Across this dangerous track, the Lord Admiral must have taken his nocturnal path to the Queen. Seymour renewed his addresses to Catharine so immediately after King Henry's death, that she was wooed and won, almost before she had assumed the widow's hood, and barb, and sweeping sable pall, which marked the relict of the departed majesty of England. Seymour had opportunities of confidential communication with the widowed queen, even before the funeral of the royal rival, for whom she had been compelled to resign him, when Lady Latimer, for he was a member of the late king's household, and had been appointed by Henry's will one of the council of regency during the minority of the young king. His person and characteristics are thus described by Hayward. The Lord Sudley, he had been elevated to that title by his nephew, Edward VI, was fierce in courage, courtly in fashion, in personage stately, in voice magnificent, but somewhat empty in matter. He was still in the prime of life, and possessed of the peculiar manners calculated to charm the softer sex. Though he had made more than one attempt to secure a splendid alliance, he had the art to make the Queen Dowager believe that he was still a bachelor for her sake. Catharine, after having been the wife of 3 mature widowers in succession, to the last of whom that joyless bauble, a crown, had tricked her into 3 years, 6 months and 14 days, of worse than Egyptian bondage, found herself, in her 35th year, still handsome, and apparently more passionately beloved than ever by the man of her heart. Womanlike, she gave him full credit for constancy and disinterested love, and found it difficult to withstand his ardent pleadings, to reward his tried affection, by resigning to him the hand which had been plighted to him before her marriage with the king. The postscript of the following letter, evidently not the first billet doux the widowed queen had penned to Seymour, contains an interesting comment on her feelings on the occasion of their previous separation, and the painful struggle it had caused. My lord, I send you my most humble and hearty commendations, being desirous to know how ye have done since I saw you. I pray you to be not offended with me, in that I send sooner to you than I said I would, for my promise was but once in a fortnight. Howbeit the time is well abbreviated, by what means I know not, except weeks be shorter at Chelsea than in other places. My lord, your brother hath deferred answering such requests as I made to him till his coming hither, which he saith shall be immediately after the term. This is not the first promise I have received of his coming, and yet unperformed. I think my lady hath taught him that lesson, for it is her custom to promise many comings to her friends, and to perform none. I trust in greater matters she is more circumspect. And thus, my lord, I make my end, bidding you most heartily farewell, wishing you the good I would myself. From Chelsea. P.S. I would not have you to think, that this mine honest good will toward you, to proceed from any sudden motion of passion, for, as truly as God is God, my mind was fully bent, the other time I was at liberty, to marry you before any man I know. Howbeit God withstood my will therein most vehemently for a time, and through his grace and goodness made that possible which seemed to me most impossible, that was, made me renounce utterly mine own will, and to follow his will most willingly. It were long to write all the process of this matter. If I live, I shall declare it to you myself. I can say nothing, but as my lady of Suffolk saith, God is a marvellous man. By her that is yours to serve and obey during her life, Catharine the Queen, K.P. Endorsed. The Queen's letter from Chelsea to my Lord Admiral. The answer to the Lord Admiral of her former loves. Seymour, who was determined not to lose Catharine a second time, would brook no delays, not even those which propriety demanded. The following letter was written by Queen Catharine in reply to one of his love letters, wherein, among other matters, their immediate marriage appears to have been warmly urged by the Admiral. My Lord, as I gather by your letter, delivered to my brother Herbert, ye are in some fear, how to frame my lord your brother to speak in your favour. The denial of your request shall make his folly more manifest to the world, which will more grieve me than the want of his speaking. I would not wish you to importune his good will, if it come not frankly at the first. It shall be sufficient once to require it, and then to cease. I would desire you might obtain the king's letters in your favour, and also the aid and furtherance of the most notable of the council, such as ye shall think convenient. Which thing, obtained, shall be no small shame to your brother and loving sister, in case they do not the like. My lord, whereas ye charge me with a promise, written with mine own hand, to change the 2 years into 2 months, I think ye have no such plain sentence written with my hand. I know not whether ye be a paraphraser or not. If ye be learned in that science, it is possible you may of one word make a whole sentence, and yet not at all times alter the true meaning of the writer, as it appeareth by this your exposition upon my writing. When it shall be your pleasure to repair hither, ye must take some pain to come early in the morning, that ye may be gone again by 7 o'clock, and so I suppose ye may come without suspect. I pray you let me have knowledge overnight at what hour ye will come, that your portress may wait at the gate to the fields for you. And thus, with your most humble and hearty commendations, I take my leave of you for this time, giving you like thanks for your coming to court when I was there, from Chelsea. P.S. I will keep in store till I speak with you my lord's large offer for Faustern, at which time I shall be glad to know your further pleasure therein. By her that is, and shall be, your humble, true, and loving wife during her life, Catharine the Queen, K.P. Although the precise date of Catharine Parr's 4th nuptials is uncertain, it is evident that the Admiral's eloquence prevailed over her punctilio at a very early period of her widowhood by persuading her to consent to a private marriage. Leti affirms that exactly 34 days after King Henry's death, a written contract of marriage and rings of betrothal were exchanged between Catharine and Sir Thomas Seymour, but the marriage was not celebrated till some months later. According to Edward VI's journal, this event took place in May, but it was certainly not made public till the end of June. Great censure has been passed on Queen Catharine for contracting matrimony again so soon after the death of her royal husband. But, in the first place, she owed neither love nor reverence to the memory of a consort who had held a sword suspended over her by a single hair for the last 6 months of their union, and in the next, Henry himself had previously led her into a similar breach of widowly decorum by inducing her to become his wife, within almost as brief a period after the death of her second husband, Lord Latimer, as her marriage with Seymour after his own. It appears evident, from the tenor of the following reverential letter, dated May 17th, from Seymour to Queen Catharine, which we give verbatim, that they had been privately married for some days, and that, at the time it was written, he was doubtful, from the cross-questioning of her sister, Lady Herbert, whether the queen had confided the secret to her, or circumstances had been whispered abroad, which had led to unpleasant reports as to the nature of his nocturnal visits to her majesty. Seymour to Catharine Parr. After my humble commendation unto your highness, yesternight I supped at my brother Herbert's, of whom, for your sake besides mine own, I received good cheer, and after the same, I received from your highness, by my sister Herbert, your commendations, which were more welcome than they were sent. And after the same, she (Lady Herbert) waited further with me touching my lodging with your highness at Chelsea, which I denied lodging with your highness, but that indeed I went by the garden as I went to the Bishop of London's house, and at this point stood with her a long time, till at last she told me further tokens, which made me change colour, who, like a false wench, took me with the manner. Then remembering what she was, and knowing how well ye trust her, examined whether those things came from your highness or were feigned. She answered, that they came from your highness, and he, Lord Herbert, that he knew it to be true. For the which I render unto your highness my most humble and hearty thanks, for by her company, in default of yours, I shall shorten the weeks in these parts, which heretofore were 4 days longer in every one of them than they were under the plummet at Chelsea. Besides this commodity, I may also inform your highness, by her, how I do proceed in my matter, although I should take my old friend Walter Errol. I have not as yet attempted my strength, for that I would be first thoroughly in credit, ere I would move the same, but beseeching your highness that I may not so use my said strength, that they shall think, and hereafter cast in my teeth, that by their suit I sought and obtained your good will, for hitherto I am out of all their dangers for any pleasure that they have done for me, worthy of thanks, and, as I judge, your highness may say the like. Wherefore mine advice will keep us, so nothing mistrusting the goodness of God, but we shall be able to live out of their danger, as they shall out of ours. Yet I mean not to use their friendship to bring our purpose to pass, as occasion shall serve. If I knew by what mean I might gratify your highness, for your goodness to me, showed at our last lodging together, it should not be slack to declare mine lady again, and to that intent that I might be more bound unto your highness, that once in 3 days I might receive 3 lines in a letter from you, and as many lines and letters more as shall seem good unto your highness. Also I shall humbly desire your highness to give me one of your small pictures, if ye have any left, who with his silence shall give me occasion to think on the friendly cheer that I shall receive when my suit shall be at an end, and thus, for fear of troubling your highness with my long and rude letter, I take my leave of your highness, wishing that my hap may be one so good, that I may declare so much by mouth at the same hour that this was writing, which was 12 of the clock in the night, this Tuesday, the 17th of May, at St. James's. I wrote your highness a line in my last letter, that my lord of Somerset was going to that shire, who hath been sick, which by the blank thereof, and as I understand, may get thither as tomorrow. From him, whom ye have bound to honour, love, and in all lawful things obey. T. Seymour, etc. Endorsed, the Lord Admiral to the Queen. In this lover-like and romantic manner did the fair Queen Dowager and her secretly wedded lord pass the merry month of May, which, according to King Edward's diary, was their bridal month. The oft-repeated assertion, that Catherine wedded Seymour so immediately after the death of her royal husband, that, had she proved a mother so soon as she might have done, it would have been a doubt whether the child should have been accounted the late king's or the admiral's, rests wholly on the charge that was brought after her decease against Seymour in his indictment. Catherine, for her own sake, would scarcely have married till full 3 months had elapsed since the death of the king, as her issue, whether male or female, by the tenor of Henry VIII's will, would have been heir presumptive to the crown of England, and she was too prudent, and at the same time too ambitious, to have risked the benefit and dignity she would have obtained by a contingency that might have ultimately given her the rank and power of a queen mother. May was certainly the earliest period in which she could, with any degree of safety, to say nothing of propriety, contract matrimony with her former lover, and even this, notwithstanding the precedent afforded by the parallel case of the precipitate marriage of Mary, Queen of France, with Charles Brandon, was a great breach of royal etiquette. Seymour, at length, became impatient of the restraints that attended his clandestine intercourse with his royal bride, and applied to the princess Mary for her advice and influence in the matter. In her dry and very characteristic reply, the princess commences with allusions to some amplification of her establishment, which the interest of Lord Seymour, in the council of guardianship and regency, had expedited. My lord, after my hearty commendations, these shall be to declare to you that, according to your accustomed gentleness, I have received 6 warrants from you by your servant, this bearer, or the bearer of this. For the which I do give you my hearty thanks, by whom also I received your letter, wherein, as methinketh, I perceive strange news concerning a suit you have in hand to the queen for marriage, for the sooner obtaining whereof you seem to think that my letters might do you a favour. My lord, in this case, I trust your wisdom doth consider that, if it were for my nearest kinsman and dearest friend on live, or alive, of all other creatures in the world it standeth least with my poor honour to be a meddler in this matter, considering whose wife her grace was of late, and besides that, if she be minded to grant your suit, my letters shall do you but small pleasure. On the other side, if the remembrance of the king's majesty, my father, whose soul God pardon, will not suffer her to grant your suit, I am nothing able to persuade her to forget the loss of him, who is as yet very rife in mine own remembrance. Wherefore, I shall most earnestly require of you, or the premises considered, to think none unkindness in me, though I refuse to be a meddler anyways in this matter, assuring you that, wooing matters set apart, wherein being a maid I am nothing cunning. If other ways it shall lie in my power to do you pleasure, I shall be as glad to do it as you to require it, both for his blood's sake that you be of, and also for the gentleness which I have always found in you, as knoweth Almighty God, to whose tuition I commit you. From Wainstead, this Saturday at night, being the 4th of June, your assured friend, to my power, Mary. The Princess Elisabeth was at that time residing at Chelsea with Queen Catharine, to whose maternal care she had been consigned by the council of the young king. It is very likely that she was very well acquainted with the whole affair, for even if the queen had not made her a confidant, her acute powers of observation, and natural talent for intrigue, would undoubtedly have enabled her to penetrate the cause of the handsome Seymour's mysterious visits and admissions, through the postern gate of the gates at Chelsea. In the latter end of May, Queen Catharine was sojourning at St. James's Palace for a few days, and while there, she wrote the young king a Latin letter on the subject of her great love for his late father Henry VIII. This was rather an extraordinary subject for the royal widow to dilate upon, since she was at the very time married to Seymour. She added to her letter many quotations from Scripture, and expressed an earnest desire that the young monarch would answer the epistle, which he did, in the same learned language. The following is a translation of Edward's letter. That of Catharine Parr is lost, but the answer gives a clear idea of its contents. As I was so near to you, and saw you, or expected to see you every day, I wrote no letter to you, since letters are tokens of remembrance and kindness between those who are at a great distance. But, being urged by your request, I would not abstain longer from writing. First, that I may do what is acceptable to you, and then to answer the letter you wrote to me when you were at St. James's, in which, first you set before my eyes the great love you bear my father the king, of most noble memory, then your good will towards me, and lastly, your godliness and knowledge and learning in the Scriptures. Proceed therefore in your good course. I continue to love my father, and to show the same great kindness to me which I have ever perceived in you. Cease not to love and read the Scriptures, but persevere in always reading them, for in the first you show the duty of a good wife and a good subject, and in the second, the warmth of your friendship, and in the third, your piety to God. Wherefore, since you love my father, I cannot but much esteem you; since you love me, I cannot but love you in return; and since you love the word of God, I do love and admire you with my whole heart. Wherefore, if there be anything wherein I may do you a kindness, either in word or deed, I will do it willingly. Farewell, this 30th of May. The artless young sovereign was in the end not only induced to recommend his wily uncle to his widowed stepmother for a husband, but led to believe that it was actually a match of his own making. In the innocence of his heart, Edward wrote the following letter with his own hand to Queen Catharine, in which he expresses himself highly obliged to her for acceding to his wish by marrying his uncle. The dignity with which the monarch, in his 10th year, offers his royal protection to the mature bride and bridegroom is truly amusing. To the Queen's Grace. We thank you heartily, not only for the gentle acceptation of our suit moved unto you, but also for the loving accomplishing of the same, wherein you have declared, not only a desire to gratify us, but to declare the goodwill, likewise that we bear to you in all your requests. Wherefore ye shall not need to fear any grief to come or to suspect lack of aid in need, seeing that he being mine uncle, is of so good a nature that he will not be troublesome any means unto you, and I of such mind, that for divers just causes I must favour you. But even as without cause you merely require help against him, whom you have put in trust with the carriage of these letters, so may I merely return the same request unto you, to provide that he may live with you also without grief, which hath given him wholly unto you, and I will so provide for you both, that if hereafter any grief befall, I shall be a sufficient succor in your godly or praiseable enterprises. Fare ye well, with much increase of honour and virtue in Christ. From St. James, the 25th day of June. Edward. Endorsed in an antique hand. The King's Majesty's letter to the Queen, after marriage, June 25th, 1548. Young Edward in his journal notices the anger of the Lord Protector at the marriage of the Admiral with the Queen Dowager. Somerset and his council loudly condemned the presumption of the audacious Seymour in daring to contract this lofty alliance without leave or license of those who exercised the authority of the crown. They did what they could to testify their hostility by withholding from Queen Catharine all the jewels that had been presented to her by the late king, under the pretext that they were not personal property, but heirlooms to the crown. This was touching the lady on a very tender point. Can a bride forget her ornaments? Is a scriptural query, founded on the characteristic attachment of females for these glittering toys. Neither the equanimity nor the philosophy of this learned queen was proof against such a provocation as the detention of the costly endowments, which had formed a portion of her conjugal wages during the perilous term of her servitude to her royal husband's caprices. The indignant remonstrances of the royal dowager were unavailing. Her jewels were never restored, and that their detention was no less illegal than vexatious may be gathered from the following observation of the Lord Admiral. My brother is wondrous hot in helping every man to his right save me. He maketh a great matter to let me have the queen's jewels, which you see by the whole opinion of the lawyers ought to belong to me, and all under pretence that he would not the king should lose so much, as if it were a loss to the king to let me have mine own. The loss of her jewels was neither the only affront nor the only wrong to which the queen dowager was subjected from her powerful brother-in-law. He had fixed his mind on obtaining a lease of her favourite manor of Fausterne for a person of the name of Long, and we have seen with what scorn Catharine, in her first letter to the admiral, speaks of his brother's large offer for Fausterne. The Protector, however, strong in the authority of his office, actually caused Long to be admitted as a tenant of her Majesty's demesne, in defiance of her wish to retain the property in her own hands. Catharine gives a lively account of her wrath at this outrage in the following letter to her husband. She says, My lord, this shall be to advertise you that my lord your brother hath this afternoon made me a little warm. It was fortunate we were so much distant, for I suppose else I should have bitten him. What cause have they to fear, she adds playfully, having such a wife? To-morrow, or else upon Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I will see the king, when I intend to utter all my choler to my lord your brother, if you shall not give me advice to the contrary, for I would be loath to do anything to hinder your matter. I will declare to you how my lord hath used me concerning Fausterne, and after I shall most humbly desire you to direct mine answer to him in that behalf. It liked him to-day to send my chancellor to me, willing him to declare to me that he had brought Master Long's lease, and that he doubted not but I would let him enjoy the same to his commodity, wherein I should do to his succession no small pleasure, nothing considering his honour, which this matter toucheth not a little, for so much as I at sundry times declared unto him that only cause of my repair into those parts was for the commodity of the park, which else I would not have done. He, notwithstanding, hath so used the matter, with giving Master Long such courage, that he hath refused to receive such cattle as are brought here for the provision of my house, and so in the meantime I am forced to commit them to the farmers. My lord, I beseech you send me word with speed, how I shall order myself to my new brother. And thus I take my leave, with my most humble and hearty commendations, wishing you all your godly desires, and so well to do as I would myself, and better. From Chelsea in great haste. By your humble, true, and loving wife in her heart, Catharine the Queen, K.P. Whether Catharine enjoyed the satisfaction of telling the protector her mind in the presence of his royal nephew does not appear, but she was probably frustrated in her intention of obtaining an interview with the young king, by the party most interested in keeping them apart. Surely so rich a scene as that which she meditated would have been recorded if it had ever taken place. Somerset is supposed to have been excited to this injurious treatment of the widow of his royal master and benefactor Henry VIII by the malice of his duchess, who had always borne envious ill will against Catharine Parr. Many and various are the accounts given by historians of the cause of the fatal animosity borne by these ladies towards each other. Open hostility between them broke out after the marriage of Catharine with the admiral, in consequence of the Duchess of Somerset refusing any longer to fulfil her office of bearing up the train of the queen dowager, alleging that it was unsuitable for her to submit to perform that service for the wife of her husband's younger brother. According to Lloyd, the Duchess not only refused to bear up the queen's train, but actually jostled with her for precedence, so that, continues he quaintly, what between the train of the queen and the long gown of the duchess, they raised so much dust at court, as at last put out the eyes of both of their husbands, and caused their executions. The pretence on which the Duchess of Somerset founded her presumptuous dispute for precedency with the queen dowager in the court of Edward VI was, that as the wife of the protector and guardian of the realm, she had a right to take place of every lady in England. It is possible that, with the exception of the ladies of the royal family, she might. But the act of Henry VIII, whereby it was provided that Anne of Cleves should take precedency after his queen, and the princesses his daughters, of every other lady in the realm, settled the matter of Catharine Parr's precedency beyond contravention, and the arrogant duchess was compelled to yield, but never forgave the mortification. According to Heylin, the Duchess of Somerset was accustomed to inveigh, in the bitterest manner, against Queen Catharine, and actually expressed herself concerning her in the following coarse and detracting language. Did not Henry VIII marry Catharine Parr in his doting days, when he had brought himself so low by his lust and cruelty, that no lady that stood on her honour would venture on him? And shall I now give place to her, who in her former estate was but Latimer's widow, and who is now fain to cast herself for support on a younger brother? If Master Admiral teach his wife no better manners, I am she that will. The tender affection which the young king lavished on the queen dowager, and his reverence for her talents, virtue, and piety, excited, of course, the jealousy and ill will, not only of the Duchess of Somerset, but of her husband also, and the vulgar insolence of the former was systematically exerted to keep so powerful a rival from court. The king was certainly far more attached to his uncle Thomas Seymour than to the protector, and Catharine Parr had always been to him in the place of the mother whom he had never known. Allied with them was his best loved sister, Elisabeth, and his amiable and highly gifted cousin, Lady Jane Grey, who were both the élèves of the queen, and residing in her house. The project of uniting Lady Jane Grey with Edward VI. Originated with Catharine Parr, who had directed her education in such a manner as to render her a suitable companion for the royal scholar. The aspiring protector desired to match King Edward with his own daughter, the learned Lady Jane Seymour, and to obtain Lady Jane Grey for his son. His plans were, however, frustrated by a private arrangement between the admiral and the Marquess of Dorset, the preliminaries of which were thus arranged. Soon after the death of King Henry, one Harrington, a confidential officer of Sir Thomas Seymour, came to the Marquess of Dorset's house at Westminster, and proposed to him to enter into a close friendship and alliance with his master, who was like to come to very great authority. He advised Dorset to permit his daughter, Lady Jane Grey, to reside with Sir Thomas Seymour, because he would have the means of matching her much to his comfort. "With whom will he match her?" asked Dorset. "Marry," quoth Harrington, "I doubt not you shall see him marry her to the king." Upon these persuasions, Dorset visited the admiral that day week, at Seymour Place, who gave such explanations of his prospects, that Dorset struck a bargain with him, sent for his daughter, and consigned her to him as an inmate of his house, in which she remained during the life of Catharine Parr. Queen Catharine's cupbearer, Nicholas Throckmorton, continued to follow her fortunes from the time of King Henry's decease. The Throckmorton manuscript furnishes the following details connected with Catharine's fourth marriage. My sovereign lost, the queen I did attend, the time when widow, mourning she did rest, and while she married was unto her end, I willingly obeyed her highness's hest, whom me esteemed, and thought my service good, whereas in truth to small effect it stood. Her husband, fourth, was uncle to the king, Lord Seymour, high by office admiral, in praise of whom loud peals I ought to ring, for he was hearty, wise, and liberal. His climbing high disdained by his peers, was thought the cause he lived not out his years. Her house was deemed a second court of right, because there flocked still nobility. He spared no cost his lady to delight, or to maintain her princely royalty. End of Section 6.